We look at it. They make $200,000 the way they do it. They make 10% to the bottom. We look at it with our buyer and we go, you know what, man, I could make 20% of the bottom. No problem. If we bolt this business onto my business, I guarantee you we can make $400,000. But let's go ahead and pay them the 2 million bucks they want because we love this company and all the other reasons we want to do that. We're going to just write you a check for $2 million. That person is going to go around telling everybody they got 10 times their EBITDA. Hi, everybody. Rick Murphy, founder, CEO of Cogent Growth Partners. We just turned 15 last month. We are a IT focused, exclusively focused IT M&A company working in the mergers and acquisition space. For the most part, on the buy side of a transaction, working for buyers and clients who want to pay us to help them find and meet and purchase other IT companies. We're not a brokerage. We are truly an advisory company. We actually do work product. And we're not just, referring people. We have 12 people in the company. I've got 7 people that are over 10 years with me now. So we have a well-oiled crew. And we do basically 3 legs of the tripod are our outreach group, which is how we meet companies, dedicated marketing, our CRM systems, and everything else we do to reach out and touch people and annoy them until they take our phone call. I'm sorry if any of you have been seeing that. And please take our phone call. We'll stop annoying you. Uh, maybe just a little bit. And doing that, we've got my 2 partners and myself. We're the deal runners. We handle all the deal transaction stuff, working with the lawyers, negotiation, just seeing all the deal points through, making sure the paperwork works. Unlike other companies, we're not a broker. We don't do sell side. And we actually do work. We actually help the deal get done. So we're trying to help the seller be responsive to due diligence because we're also usually responsible for the due diligence for our buyer. And while we're doing all the due diligence, I can produce the schedules that go with the purchase agreements. And because it's our purchase agreement, usually we know where all the closets to look in and the rocks to look under. So we've got this whole process systematized way we do deals. It helps everybody get it done. It helps us get it done timely. I can take a deal from LOI to close in 8 to 12 weeks, or most people take months. We can usually do it in 8 to 10, unless people are being lazy. So that's who we are. The rest of my people are business analysis types. We do all of the accounting, the functional due diligence, everything from customer analysis, headcount, HR analysis, and then financial analysis through the entire company. And then we're not a law firm. We're not a CPA firm, but we play one on TV. And we handle, you don't have to be a lawyer to draft a purchase agreement. You have to be a lawyer to give legal advice. We don't give legal advice. We can give business advice all day long. I've personally been doing this for almost 30 years in the M&A space on the buy side. And then, for 15 years doing IT deals like we do. Been in lots of movies. I'm not saying there's nothing new under the sun, but we've certainly seen a lot. So there's then, we get both sides. Hey, tell me how it went bad. Tell me how it went good. So I'm not afraid to tell war stories from either side of that. Okay?
Yeah, love that.
That's what we do.
So what you do is very unique because you're fully integrated in a very specific niche, which is amazing. It's like the perfect partner to do acquisitions. So let's start.
I'd like to think so.
No, it is. It's very unique, and I'd love. I think you are the type of operation that you want. If you're a buyer, you're the M&A machine, and it's outsourced, but it's great.
And if you're a seller, we're the M&A machine, right?
Yeah.
So I literally just off a call with somebody who's a former client who I talked to him, just reconnect. We reconnect with people on occasion. I reconnect with him. He's taking his business about twice the size I remember him a couple of years ago.
Nice.
I'm making a lot more money, and he wants to be a buyer. But the more I talked to him, the more I looked at his company, what he was doing. I actually have a client, which probably all of you have heard of my client, but I've got a client that would love their business. It fits with a it fits with a verticalization that they're very interested in doing. And when I was talking about, I knew this guy, they named him. I said, hey, if you can put me in touch with this guy, wow, that'd be awesome. So small, it's a small world. And I just got off the phone with them just before this call saying, hey, these guys would really like to date you. We'll see where it goes, but the dating thing could be really cool. And they're really good people to date. It's like having the the cute chick at the wanted to go to the prom with you, you know.
That's awesome. So now
Yeah.
let's start from the beginning. So you're doing the origination of deal flow. What channels are you using? How are you like you've been doing this for a long time. So but you have this machine running, the CRM machine running for a while. What is your process there?
So big picture, I'll try to do it quickly. Back in the day, I mean, I was a single guy just working the phones myself, and just, that's how you get started way back in the day. Um, but quickly developed an outreach crew. So I've got 4 people on our outreach team. We use 3 different tool sets. We use Salesforce also as our core way we run our business to keep all the information. I've got an instance open up here. This will be fed in. This call will be fed into the instance of this on
Nice.
our CRM system, which I'm in love with. These AI tracking tools are awesome because I can talk with my hands now. Yay.
Nice.
Um, and so we have over the years, we've just been scrubbing databases, website databases, channel partner databases. We've bought databases before. So we've got about 35 odd thousand companies that appear to be IT services companies in our database. And we actually have one person full time spends her entire day scrubbing um, companies that we think might be IT companies. Because again, it looks like an IT company, but are they a software company? Are they a this? Are they are they a VAR? What kind of, if it looks like a duck, but what kind of duck is it? Is it a mallard? So we spend a lot of our time sort of researching. We call it research, researching the database to make people outreachable. And then with our clientele, we do every clientele gets a mandate. We work on a mandate basis. So as we bring on a new client, we want to understand, what are they looking for? What would make them happy? Are they good suitors? I mean, first thing is we have a no jerks policy. Right. So the top of that food stack is no jerks policy. We don't work for jerks. They've got to be a good suitor. If you want to be a buyer, why should you be a buyer? And we're going to help you figure that out. There's some people just shouldn't be buyers. Not everybody just that wants to be a buyer should be a buyer, for what it's worth. But that said, the ability to then say, okay, we've got a mandate from our various clients. So we're reaching out and touching and learning and trying to meet other, we call them M&A-curious companies, right? So they're M&A-curious. It's a single investment. We're not a broker. We don't charge sellers money. Our buyers pay us. So it's really easy to engage with us if you are M&A-curious seller. Sometimes people are, also, can I be a buyer? We have those conversations a lot. But we over the years we've developed a way. So I've got 3 other people full time. We have phone call campaigns, email campaigns, all kinds of different marketing that we do, marketing newsletter campaigns. And as the amalgam of all that, we get appointments where we have a discovery call, just like you would have a discovery call with a new client. We have a discovery call with somebody might be a new client, somebody might be a new seller. We call them candidate companies instead of targets because I think it's rude to call them targets, first of all. And it's inaccurate because most of the people we're looking at are not already represented. So when we're making a phone call to a company, it is usually a company that's not represented by a broker, which we prefer and our clients prefer because there's not a lot of unusual misconceptions and things put in people's heads. We've got a clean shot at working with somebody straight up.
Okay, so you don't really outreach until you have a mandate.
That's right. Well, again, we've been doing mandates over the years, and we've been doing outreach. For example, I've got a new client, believe it, in Metro New York. But we've been working Metro New York since the day I opened the company, right?
Okay.
We've been in and out of Metro New York. So there's lots of companies we've talked to in the past, people that have already traded, whether they're gone or not gone. You don't see a lot of, weirdly enough, interesting thing. You don't see a lot of out of business guys.
Yeah.
So we were just ruminating on that the other day. It's like, you'd think that in our business, you would see a lot of people gone out of business. We don't really see that, interestingly enough. So these companies, they usually trade or something happens or they're still there. This guy I talked to today, I've known for, the one I just talked about, I've known him for 8 years.
Wow. And part of your value, what makes you different is that you're not a broker. So you come at them with that message. I'm not a broker. I don't charge fees. If you're curious about M&A, let's talk.
That's right.
And
That's
do you offer them that there's no fees on the back end, like a like legal or whatever? Is that also part of the value prop? The client pays, the buyer's pays.
Our buyer pays me. Buyer has their own attorney. They pay the attorney.
Yeah.
We manage their attorney if they'll let us, which we like. That works best because we have the experience,
Yeah.
and we can help our client buyer get through that properly.
Got it.
Uh,
So so a huge value prop to the seller because they don't have to pay any fees whatsoever. But then
That's
in
right.
that case, you're having the conversation with the seller without any competitors, and then
That's right.
you can level set the pricing. You can level set. You have a little bit
And just
more.
be straight up and honest, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much BS in the market, and everybody talks about multiple this and multiple that. And I am Mr. Multiple Schmultiple. Our
Yeah.
company is the multiple schmultiple company. Multiples aren't actually a gap accounting principle. It's invented bullshit. That said, that's what everybody talks about, right?
Yeah.
They think it's my free cash flow. In the absence of debt, and if you ignore the balance sheet generally, then EBITDA is a proxy for free cash flow. But in GAAP accounting, it's free cash flow. That's an actual component of
Yeah.
GAAP accounting. And people don't look at that, which is they're typically not looking at their cash flow statements. They don't even have one. Um, they're looking at a P&L every 4 months when they do their books. It just depends on how mature the company is.
Yeah.
We get SLI. We get Evolve. We were an Evolve sponsor. We were just at Grow recently. My partner George spoke at Grow, and we just got back from the Evergreen conference where we spoke there also. We do also speak at the Kaseya stuff, so we're kind of out there in the different ecosystems.
Okay.
Um,
So you
but go ahead.
so you're out there. So let's double click on that. What are your thoughts on multiples?
So that's a real big ass quick trick question, right? So my first thought on multiples is they're mostly crap. Um, because there's the perspective. So perspective is the missing word. So I'll answer that question with a quick test, right? And we can talk more about this if you want. So we have this $2 million company, and this is just for math purposes. Okay. I'm not trying to imply multiples or anything else. Got $2 million company. We look at it. They make $200,000 the way they do it. They make 10% to the bottom. We look at it with our buyer and we go, you know what, man, I could make 20% of the bottom, no problem with this business. If we bolt this business onto my business, I guarantee we can make $400,000, no problem. And forgetting why and how and everything. Let's go ahead and pay them the 2 million bucks they want because we love this company and all the other reasons we want to do that. Because you have to have a lot of reasons to want to do that. Well, let's say we do. We're going to just write you a check for $2 million. That person is going to go around telling everybody they got 10 times their EBITDA.
Yes.
What did the buyer pay?
In their mind, 5 times.
It's not in their mind. So that's wrong. Wrong. They actually paid 5 times
Okay.
because they're going to make those cuts. Those things are going to happen, right?
Yeah.
It's not bet on pie in the sky sales stuff. So I should have said without sales hooey involved in it.
Yeah.
So it's not about paying somebody on projections and forward thinking. It's about realistic add backs, which are a misnomer also. So when you look at the EBITDA, what's my multiple? Well, every buyer I know, and I know hundreds of them, they want to be paid back for their investment within 60 months, right?
Yeah.
That's a 5 times multiple, round number.
Yeah.
If I paid you 15 times, I'd get in this argument constantly. Hard to win and don't necessarily win, just telling the story. But I had guys, well, I got 13 times for my company. I said, okay, from your perspective, that's lovely, but you got to stop telling people that. I'll go another one. Arnie Bellini told everybody he's getting 16, 17 times for ConnectPlus. You can look it up right now on, I forget where it is. I've read it before online. Maybe it's on Channel EE or wherever. Thelma Bravo came out and told everybody they got 5 times. They paid 5 times. I was astounded. Like, oh, thank God somebody finally said this out loud. And, if you remember the news, they riffed about 250 people. They got rid of a couple underperforming divisions. So it wasn't about maybe someday I'm going to make money from this.
Yeah.
They went in and made the company right-sized as they knew they would. And then whatever else they do from sales and stuff is gravy on top of that.
Yeah.
So they paid 5. The seller thought he got 15.
Yeah.
Well, which one's right? They're both right.
They're both right. Yeah.
That's broker networks. Well, the seller broker network's perspective touts the sell side version.
Yes.
And one of the reasons they do that is they don't have privy to why the buyer paid what they paid.
Correct.
They could easily say, look, I got this guy 10 times his trailing. Okay, great. What's the buyer going to do with it? Because he's not going to wait 10 years to get his money back.
Makes sense.
And for anybody that's want to be a buyer, there's nobody on here that's want to be a buyer that you're not going to wait 10 years to get your money back or 15 years to get your money back. You're going to want your money back in 48 to 60 months, maybe 72 months if there's some other dripping wet, real good ideas to do that.
Yeah.
You need to figure out how to get there. So part of our job is doing the modeling that we need to do. We have our own proprietary financial modeling. We call it a purchase price model, but it's a lot more than that. It analyzes customers, it analyzes their P&Ls and balance sheets and cash flow and their HR and coming and going and trailing and forward and all kinds of fun stuff. But it doesn't rely on a bunch of hooey. So it's very straight up. It's very conservative. And the idea is that conservatively, how do we? There's this whole purchase price tab that everything feeds to dynamically. But the point is on pulling the levers, like, hey, if we believe this is about the free cash flow it's going to do, how much do I have to pay, and how do I need to pay it to make a deal work, where I can get a return on my investment and return on cash within a definable window of time, if all these things are reasonably true. So if we're conservatively modeling that, then it's a high degree of likelihood that those reasonably things will actually become true.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And if they don't, we're going to make them true because people are going to lose their, we're going to right size HR and get rid of crappy clients and whatever, right?
Yeah. So let's go back to the part where you mentioned who needs to be a buyer, who should be a buyer. So who should be a buyer and who should not?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things, right? So I've got a meeting today. So I'm sorry about to keep going there, but I've got a meeting this afternoon with a buyer who we were working for under a project basis. We do projects as well. If somebody's already found somebody and you want us to help you get through the process, we can do it as a project. It doesn't have to be our normal retainer relationship. It's called a buy-side project. This is a buy-side project. We're trying to close the thing. And I just found out like 2 days ago, last week, that they hadn't gone through underwriting with their banker yet. I'm like, guys, we're supposed to close this thing on the 1st. What the hell have you been waiting for? And you're telling me I got to tell the seller that there's no bueno on the money on the 2nd, and we're going to have to wait till the 15th or wait till your banking's done? That was a bad idea. And why didn't you share that with us? Because I thought we'd talked about this already. So in terms of being, on my bottom of my business card, it says transaction therapist. So we do a lot of transaction therapy with our buyers and with our sellers. So to be a buyer is, do you have financial access to financial capital? Do you have access to capital? Some of your own money would be really helpful. Having good banking relationships. We don't know any. We know some banks. We don't make any money from referring banks. We just like to get deals done. So they're banks that like what we do and help us get deals done. No quid pro quo dollars. And so how do you fix financially, right? That's super important. Do you have the credit worthiness to get bank money? Do you have banking relationships where you can get bank money? Have you stashed any money? Personally, have you stashed any money? Have you built wealth with the company? Lots of different ways to look at it. A good credit line is very handy because you can write a check off of a credit line that you maybe never use. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. So that's the first thing. Second thing, and it's like 1A and 1B, is, are you a jerk? Like literally. Do you have the charisma and the character to be a good suitor? We didn't know this until a few years into our customer relationships over the years. But some time ago, I had to write into our engagement agreement, our client engagement agreement, the ability to fire a client. And I had fired one that was just being a real, oh my God, jerk. Basically trying to make us complicit to ripping off a seller. I was like, I wouldn't do it. And I walked away from the deal, and we got nasty grams from him, which I got a frame one to put on my wall. I have my wall of stuff up here. It said, you can't fire me. I'm like, what? I got to call my lawyer. I can fire him, right? Right? I can still fire him. So yeah, but I had to write clauses in our engagement agreement so I could fire somebody because they were treating my staff terribly. They were treating me terribly. And worse, they were treating the seller like meat. I mean, they were just treating them awfully. And then they were talking about ways to screw the seller to us, to me and my team. I'm like, guys, we don't do this. We walked away. We actually saved the seller from actually selling their company and built that new thing. So ethics, morals, scruples are all important to us. And there's lots of ways we can have conversations with people to see how they comport themselves. Specifically, this is not like buying a house. It's not like buying a building. It's not buying an inanimate object. It's not like buying a car. You are buying an appreciating asset that is somebody's family, that they believe in. They care about their customers. They care about their people, especially the people we bring because they're not already brokered. The brokered people, kind of hard to say. Hey, I love my people. I love all this stuff, but I'm going to auction my coffee up. I'm going to auction off my company to the highest bidder. There's something wrong there, right?
Yeah.
That's not a real alignment. I mean, it's okay if you want to do that, but don't tell me how much you love everybody, and then you're going to auction them off to the highest bidder and hit the road. There's a dichotomy there. So we like to work with companies that are not brokered for that very reason, because then it's just, hey, do you guys love each other? So again, can you be a good recruiter? So to be a buyer, are you a great recruiter? Can you recruit talent? Because when you go to buy a company, you're recruiting the owner's other owners. There might be a group of people. You've got a management team that's probably going to make the trip, which we highly recommend, by the way. You're not buying a book of the business. We can talk more about that some other time or however you want to do that. But you're buying a company, a living, breathing thing with all these people that work there that have the client relationships, and you need that all to come along.
Yeah.
Most of our clients that do a really good job, they actually have room for management to make the trip over so that the owner stays. Uh, Unless the owner's really just done, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they don't know that till they're 6, 8 months in with you.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I hate going to work every day. So that's okay. That happens. But generally speaking, you've got all this talent, this company that's got a brand awareness, it's got identity, and then you just ruin it. Don't do that. So when we look at who's can be a good suitor, are you coming in and telling me how well you're going to do? I've never bought a company before, but you got all these preconceived notions, and you're trying to tell me how I'm going to do my job, and we're just like, yeah, you have fun with that. It looks good on you, though. That hat looks awesome. Uh, no disrespect, Nick.
So,
I think that was it.
so,
That was a Caddyshack reference.
so you want them to be financially able. You want them to not be jerks. You want them to be good recruiters. What else?
Mhm. All right, so not jerks, good recruiters, and then good, mature business practices, right? So how do you operate your company? And when you go to look at bolting on another company to your company, uh, do you have a really good ability to run your company now already, right? Because to be a good suitor, the person that's wanting to sell to you, or you're going to convince to sell to you, why should they sell to you? Why are you better than them? Why are you better together than apart? And part of that is because, well, I've been running my company the way I run it. Our OML score is here. We do this, we do that, we do this, whatever you do. And not every company is the same. But you run a good, solid MSP, whatever you are. The variations on that theme as well. You run a good, solid. I like the new TSP moniker that Neckwise uses. Technology service provider is kind of cool. So we're kind of stealing that a little bit. But if you're running a solid TSP, well, then you're desirable to a smaller TSP, MSP, and you can more readily determine how they might help you and how you might help them, and make sure they have a space for you at the company. So you, again, can take on new people. It's not just about being the recruiter. It's like, can you do it technically? Right? Do you have
Makes sense.
yeah, I mean, do you have some financial acumen? Damn helpful. Do you have sales acumen? Really helpful. You know, everybody can do operations, or how, and again, no disrespect to operations people, but operations is even a thing, right? How do you operate? We're using some SEO. Some people are using Halo now. It's a new one. So, hey, can a Halo company buy a ConnectWise company? And which way do you go?
Yeah.
If you talk to ConnectWise, they're going to be pissed if you move them off ConnectWise to Halo.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the way to go for that particular company.
But everybody hates ConnectWise, so so there won't be that big of a problem. So
Forever.
how about someone who doesn't own an MSP or TSP and wants to get into the MSP industry? So they have some business acumen, they have marketing, sales acumen. What value do they bring? Aside from the financial, being a good suitor, not being a jerk, being a good recruiter. What else?
Things are important.
Yes.
All of those things are important.
Yes.
It's really then, what is what's your CV look like relative to owning and running an IT company?
Got it.
Why? Again, if I'm buying the company at auction, then they don't care and they'll sell it to anybody. But if you've got somebody that's M&A curious, that even if they're going to move on, it's really, the idea again behind why, right?
Got it.
Well, why are you going to be effective, as the CEO or the owner? And the really good answer to that is like, you know what? I'm going to come in and be the owner, but you're the management and I'm buying management, right? And knowing that you need to find a company that you can buy management and just learn and let them run the company. I mean, that's what most people do anyway, right?
Yeah.
Um, there's the big misnomer about what you need to do from an integration perspective. I mean, there's companies that believe in full integration, and they will only do deals where they can be fully integrated. And I'm a subscriber to that. I think that's a really good idea. But there's also companies that do zero integration. They just work because they have sister companies. And they work together sort of as a team.
Yeah.
And then there's variations on that theme, right? So there's
Yeah.
companies that do a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Actually, the one I was talking to this morning, the suitor does both. They leave the brand identity intact, and then they subsume the company a little bit, but it's not a full integration. So it's
Yeah.
like a little halfway.
Yeah. Shared services. They may have shared services.
Yeah,
They may
think of it
not.
like a sibling company relationship,
Yeah.
instead of you work for me, I work for you.
Got it. So
And
but they keep the team together. They keep the management
yep.
together. Got it.
Oh, and that's really important. In this industry, I mean, people that watched the movie Wall Street back in the day,
Yeah.
this is a different universe, right? It's never, well, that universe still exists, but not in the IT space. Because the IT space is a services business. It's like buying a CPA firm or buying a law firm. IT firm is very similar.
Yeah.
It's a professional services firm, architecture firm. Anybody that sells professional services, which is a lot of IT companies do really well, selling to professional services companies, doctors, lawyers, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's that same kind of value prop, right?
Yeah.
If the doctors aren't there, what's the practice worth?
Correct.
Right? And if the clientele of the doctor isn't there, what's the practice worth? So you kind of need both. Law firms, same thing, right? It's that the partners' relationships with the customers. So it's both, and you need the
Yes.
talent, and you can't just buy a law firm, get rid of all the lawyers. That would be a really bad idea. That's the same thing in IT company. You can't buy an IT company and get rid of all the L2s and the L3s and all the management people who are responsible for these relationships and getting stuff done.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. So ego is a big thing. Coming back to why should I be a buyer?
Yeah.
Things to look out for if you're a seller also. Um, but is the ego a little too big, right?
So how do you coach your buyers in those first, that first meeting or the first two meetings? What's your strategy? How do you
It's a
coach
real
them?
good question. That's a real good question. So we call it opportunity first, money last. It's actually a saying that's up on our website. It's the truth. If you think about a brokered deal, it's always money first, opportunity second. Um, and that's why a lot of those deals don't happen. And a lot of people just sort of measuring as, oh, how much EBITDA you got? Well, and the guy goes, well, what's your multiple on my EBITDA? I say, well, I don't, I'll pay you 7 times. Like, well, why do you even have this conversation? I don't know anything about your business. I don't know you personally. I don't know anything about your team. I don't know anything about your customers. I don't know your HR. I don't know anything about you. And you want me to peg how much I'm going to pay for your company? Just because you said you have a pretty a pretty confidential information memorandum for those who don't know what that is. I got this pretty workbook, the booklet that the broker made that has all this bullshit in it, right? Usually, almost always, I usually throw them in the garbage. Every once in a while, you find like a slide or two that works, but all the rest of it's usually crap. Sorry if I'm offending anybody on this call. Um, I
No, you're
don't
good.
care.
No, you're good. You're good. You're
Uh,
telling the truth.
It's the truth. So at the end of the day, you're not really looking at that. You're really looking at the nuts and bolts of why should we do this. So opportunity first, money last is the first thing we coach on both sides. I don't want the potential. We call them a candidate because they're not sure. They're only M&A-curious when you first meet them. They're not necessarily for sale. A lot of times we try to tell them, don't say to the new suitor that you're not for sale. Don't say I could stay or I could go. Please don't do that. Be engage, learn, shut up, learn, tell them your story too, be transparent, and then go hang up the phone and see if there's a reason to have a second date. We liken it to a dating process, right? So opportunity first means why should we do this? Let's talk about sales. Let's talk about what you do and how you do it. What kind of tools do you use? how much rates what do you charge for rate wise? Are you a per seat or per this or do you do blended cybersecurity? What else do you do? What do you do? How do you do it? Here's what we do, how we do it. Does that feel like a good fit? Let's talk about culture or lack thereof. We work from remote. We don't work from remote. Everybody has to work at the office, somewhere in the between. And let's talk about all that stuff to see if there's a fit. And hey, we're running out of time in this first meeting. Let's have a second meeting and follow up after we had a chance to think about it. They bounce it off me and go, hey, I kind of like Bob. It's pretty cool. I'd like to talk about this, this, and this. Bob says, hey, I really like Jay a lot. That was fun. But I have some questions. Let's talk about this, this, and this. Um, that's actually a follow-up I'm just doing in a few minutes, which is kind of a debrief from those meetings. So they've already met to each other. So I'm debriefing with both sides so I can hear what they're saying, so I can get that second date to go down a good path and have a good second date, right? So if you think about the way we do it, it's a dating process, which is completely antithetical to a broker process, right?
Yeah.
I could be crude, I won't be crude, but the broker process is more sex worker style.
How much?
Right. Not much different, really. Pimping out a company to make them look pretty and getting a cute skirt on, which is, but you gotta look, you have, what do you look like with the makeup off?
Yeah.
So, we like to think about, being opportunity first is, having a first date, not trying to get too far on the first date. And is there a good reason to have a second date? And after the second date, or maybe even the third date, is there a reason to start sharing due diligence? Because you're building trust, reciprocal trust. Biggest thing. Deal killer is when the trust dies, which is how that deal died a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
The buyer just lost all trust and faith in the seller. The seller was being a jerk, and because their attorney was egging them on, and this went on for like a month, and my buyer finally said, I can't take this anymore. I'm out of here. We're done. Which is just really unusual and unfortunate. That doesn't always happen. But it comes back to what your priorities are and how you focus on those things and what's important, right? So what's important is, does it feel like a good fit already? And if that's true, again, I've said it before, we can usually make the money work as long as nobody's crazy on either side.
Yeah. So do you have that second meeting or third meeting in person? Or do you?
It's always wonderful. If you can do it, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Even on the first day, you can have a first date. It's nice to have a first call, then a first meeting.
Yeah.
And then see where it goes.
Yeah.
And if you're developing trust, so where I was going with the trust thing is, it's got to be trust both sides.
Yeah.
Where deals go to die also is when the buyer's being too picky.
Yeah. And
they're pissing off the seller because, like, why do you want to know what color, what toenail polish I use? Why do you even care if I use toenail polish? Aren't we talking about this over here?
It's not relevant.
Well, you go down all these rabbit holes for no real reason, just to like win or impose your will, which is a buyer we don't like working for. Imposing your will is not how you do deals, right? Yeah. Being flexible and pliable and being silly putty is how to get deals done. Yeah. And then the sell side is the same way, in that, like, they've got to trust you too. Yeah. You have to be trustworthy to be a buyer. And are you trustworthy? It's part of our no jerks policy test.
Yeah.
So the trustworthiness is really huge because deals die over that all the time. We've got a great track record of deals not dying for the last 12 months, 16 months. Boy, it's not that more than not are dying, but there's definitely more dying than we're used to. And it's the trust dies all of a sudden. It lasts too long. Time kills deals. It's a phrase I did not invent, but it's the truth. And why? Because stuff goes to fester. And I got this thing in the back of my head I woke up with yesterday. You haven't answered my question the way I want you to, and you don't know that you didn't answer it right. So there's nobody like me to maybe go in between you, and you're talking to each other. And wow, the trust goes down the tubes.
Yeah.
And that one that died, my buyer loves me. It was like, I'm so sorry, Merv, we got to do this, but they didn't trust the seller anymore to do the right thing and get to the next step without costing lots more money, lots more angst, and they were being really petulant. And the petulant was deal killer. They were acting like a little schoolgirl. It was terrible. And I actually called him on this. It's like, so I'm a little salty over those I'm a little salty over those contemptuous words you use there, Murph. It's like, we've been working on this for a year and a half, and you just effed it all up, buddy pal.
Oh man,
because you're being a petulant little twit. But anyway, so Well, that matters though. That really matters. I mean, it sounds trite, but tell those stories because it's the silly stuff like that that actually festers and kills a deal. So that trust building that you do in the dating process and throughout the entire project process, when we project manage a project, we're trying to reinforce, keep the trust going, keep the trust going. If there's an issue, let's work through it. Get on
Yes.
the phone together. You meet face to face together. You don't just email each other back and forth, you know?
Yes.
Um,
And I tell the guys the same thing. Like, it's all your interaction from day one, from the first conversation, is either adding to trust or reducing from trust. And all that trust that you build over time is going to help you down the line when you're in due diligence or when you're in dealing with the purchase contract at the end. And this that built up trust is going to help push the transaction through or kill it.
Yeah, no, it should prevent you from having again another phrase that an event, are there any hills you're going to go die on? And then that one deal it died on a couple of hills that weren't even hills. I mean, they weren't even bumps in a road, but they let the seller say, well, I guess we're at an impasse over these three stupid things that there was no reason to say that out loud and just completely ridiculously last straw pissed off the buyer.
Uh,
It's like, you want to go die on these hills?
yeah.
How are we ever going to get through the rest of the paperwork? I don't even want to employ you. What kind of a pain in the ass are you going to be as an employee?
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff starts happening, and people don't think about that,
Yeah.
right? You're comporting yourself the way you comport yourself. Well, it's representative of a year from now when we have to work together. What kind of human being are you going to be then?
Yeah. Yeah. So now we talked about what is the buyer, what is the ideal buyer, what does the ideal seller look like?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Um, I can tell you it would be nice if they knew financials. That'd be damn helpful. Most sellers do not have a handle even remotely on any kind of financial anything. They just suck at it. And the most important thing is to find or work with a seller because most of them just don't. So they can understand um, deferred revenue as an accounting concept, which they usually don't. Um, what is the difference between accrual and cash accounting is a good reason to understand deferred revenue. But just generally knowing that they have some handle on their business so I can trust what they say, because if they're not into their financials and they're not running their most SMB, MSP types, TSB types, they run their business based on what their tax accountant tells them. And that is the worst possible thing to do.
Right.
Every CPA that I've ever talked to says, thank you, Murphy, for saying that out loud. I've said that out loud on stage. And they're running their whole company based on their entire lifestyle running to the business. And then they're pissed off when the ad backs don't make the trip, because they were told these ad backs are ad backs when in fact they're not ad backs, or they might be ad backs, but it goes to your character. If you're willing to F over the IRS, what kind of human being are you? What's going to happen when we're talking about us working together? How are you going to treat me?
Yeah.
So it goes to your character is the first thing. But the second thing, from a financial perspective, nobody really cares completely, but it's going to stop. So you create habits that are not supportable forward. So in a good seller, they don't do that. They don't take a lot of owner benefit. Very de minimis owner benefit, just a little tiny bit of owner benefit. I had one guy, his only owner benefit, he pays for a car. I said, do you use the car for work? He goes, yeah, sometimes. Well, that's not even a problem. You can,
Yeah.
it's not, the economics are going to change probably from that, but it's okay. Nobody's going to have a problem with that. But, hey, I'm putting my kids through college. I got three of my children on the payroll so they can have a 401k. I mean, you couldn't believe the stuff I've heard. Jet ownership, airplanes, boats, all kinds of stuff we see, as owner benefit. And like, whoa, you can't, your lifestyle is going to change. We're going to write you a big check theoretically for a nice portion of the transaction, but it replaces this graft you've been pulling out of your business. So if you just ran the business straight up normal, without all of the owner benefit thing, and really finding it means they're also paying more attention to their financials generally. They understand a P&L. They probably, hopefully understand a cash flow statement, and they're running the business on a cash flow statement, which is really rare.
Yeah.
And they're all cash accounting. So if you could find somebody that did accrual accounting, that'd be a huge plus. But just generally speaking, um,
Financial literacy.
financial literacy was huge, and financial literacy, within the concept of I don't know everything I don't know,
Yeah.
um, and I'm not running the business as a philanthropy on the one hand.
Yeah.
I'm not running the business as a personal tax haven on the other hand.
Yeah.
So you find those businesses, that's first line of defense.
Yeah.
We sadly don't really know that usually until there's been a couple of dates because we haven't seen financial information. We asked lots of really good questions. Let's see if we can find out along the way.
Yeah.
Um, and we're just kind of used to the fact they all suck at financials.
So that's financial. That's number one. What's number two?
Customers.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So what do you
What
mean?
kind of customers do they have? How many small customers do they have? I'm talking small, less than $1,000 a month.
Okay.
How much of their revenue also is key customer? So you get both sides, right? Small is one thing, but customer concentration is a big problem. Now we know how to work around customer concentration. Not everybody does. So in our paperwork, we know how to do key customer clauses and other things that benefit our buyer and keep the seller honest. But we share it with the seller and say, look, seller, you've got 3 of your customers are 50% of your revenue. So obviously, if for some reason those people go away, then our purchase price paradigm has changed a lot. Now I can't cause it. So as long as I don't cause it, I need some way to maybe create a key customer reset that creates a new financial arrangement should that key customer go away within a period of time.
Got it.
Some people run screaming out of the room, and that's just not their cup of tea. How dare you? I've had this plan with me for 20 years, which scares me even more because they've gotten for 20 years. That means they're ripe for change. If you said I've had this plan for 4 years, I'd be more comfortable, frankly, because you're still growing that relationship. Um, but the idea that you're looking at the customers, so we do a very deep dive on customers, customer concentration, win loss, customer win loss, customer consistency, um, turnover in customers, certainly customer size matters. So we do a lot of pivoting on that in our model, pre-LOI, so that we don't have a lot of retraded deals.
Oh, you do that pre-LOI?
We like to. Now, we don't always get it pre-LOI, but we really like it when we do our modeling.
Okay.
So now that's really interesting you said that, though. So
Yeah.
let me come back at you with that knee jerk. So, hey, one of the things I think is wrong with the broker process is you don't get a chance to meet management like you'd really like to. You don't get a chance to look under the covers like you'd really like to until after an LOI has been signed.
Yeah.
And that's why those deals a lot of times go to die because they get retraded. Because wait a minute, you told me it looked like you did $1 million in EBITDA, and we're looking under every rock we could find. I can only find 700. That's a different multiple. That's a different, but even the multiplier, the same multiple, is less money.
Yeah.
And I can't pay you the same money. Oh my God. And then everybody goes and gets pissed off. And sometimes they fix, but sometimes they don't.
So you said small customers. Is having a lot of small customers good or bad from your perspective?
So typically when you're looking at a buyer has more operational maturity than the company they're buying. And when they have more operational maturity when the company they're buying, customer size matters to them. Again, anecdotes. I guess I've got a client that used to think they very care deeply about their customer sandbox. They've kind of gotten over that a little bit. They care very deeply about the customer sandbox, but they've got their company average client over $4,000 a month now. So if they took on a customer base that had a bunch of $1,000 a month clients, it brings down their average. And also the way they hire the technicians they hire and the way they run their whole ticketing system, everything they do from seeing something from ticket A all the way through out the door it's done.
Yeah.
Is used to working with customers that also the customers have more operational maturity. They're bigger customers and they spend more money. They have more of a commitment to IT than a smaller customer.
Makes sense.
So they're just a smarter, better customer generally.
Yeah.
And they're typically they make a little more money on that also. So it's a little bit about money.
Yeah.
But their tech stack and their human being tech stack are aligned to service customers that are no smaller than this with an average customer of this. So you take another company that's much smaller, it's not going to be a good fit.
Makes sense.
And you're not going to. So being a buyer, hey, it's a fixer upper. We'll go buy these small customers and turn them into big customers. Really bad idea. Highly unlikely. You might get a few to move, but not the best thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Seen people try to do it though. It's just not a good idea.
That makes sense. So the client base, called client concentration. We talked about financial acumen. We talked about client base. What's the third thing?
Employees.
Okay.
Who are they? What do they do? And this is like 1A, 1B, 1C. These are all
Yeah.
number
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
level things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, the three legs of the tripod, if you will.
Yes.
Um, and so the customers, excuse me, you did the customers know what's up with the employees. Do all of your employees have a non-solicit piece of paper? Non-compete's not very enforceable anymore, but at least we'll know there's a non-solicit in place.
Non-solicit. Yeah.
Do you have employment agreements with the employees? And if you do, what's in them? And what have you promised them? Specifically around PTO and PTO balances. Is the PTO use it or lose it? That sounds trite on the surface, but at the end of the day, when you go to sell the company, if you've got to use it or lose it, and it's towards the end of a year where people still have a PTO balance they haven't used for whatever reason,
Yeah.
you went to sell the company that day. Well, golly geez, you mean here we are on the other side of the deal, and my PTO went away. My 2 weeks of PTO I didn't get to take went away.
Yeah.
And got a seller. Like, well, wait a minute, that's your problem. It's not my problem. I said, no. You ran up this PTO on your watch.
Mm.
You got to write my buyer a check for that PTO because that person should see that money, and because they're going to be pissed off otherwise. So we need to keep that employee happy.
Yeah.
So that's your problem, and you need to reimburse me for that. That
Yeah.
sounds small and trite, but when you got 20, 30 people, even 10 people in an employment base or more, that can add up to be a lot of money.
Mm.
And just be thinking about how they're treating the employees. What's the corporate culture around the employees? What do they expect? Do they get free snacks on their desk every day and lattes and foot massages and whatever? You know, are they all working from home? Doing the same thing?
Yeah.
I want to look at that. But generally, getting a handle on what the employees do, what's their responsibilities, and what I like to recommend to everybody is imagine that you take all the employees from both sides of the table and you dump them in the middle of the table, and then you put the company back together again.
Yeah.
What's left? What's left over? Anybody, or a handful of people, or
Yeah.
two, or nothing? With what was, and what jobs are they all going to do? Are they doing exactly the same thing they want to do? Probably not. Are they reporting to different people? Probably. What's it really look like? And does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of that you can actually do in our modeling ahead of the LOI. So you got a good feeling about it before you do the LOI. So you're not being blindsided by things that happen later, and you find out there's oil and water. You find out things don't work. There's business practices they do that we don't do. Good example, HR practices when it comes to health insurance. Okay. Had a company, and actually was one of the deals that died, one of the things that was a problem, which we fixed, but there was animosity around it. Animus is the enemy. As he, about a year and a half ago, started paying his employees 100% of their benefits. So every single employee out of 30 some odd employees, 35 employees, went from 50% employer paid to 100% employer paid. Right about the same time they started dancing with the suitor.
Oh, that's not good.
Oh, not good, right?
That's not good.
Never kind of found out about that. It's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Cool. And then he was really adamant about it later. And one of the things that became a problem actually was, we can't talk to the employees. Usually you can't talk to them before closing. It's not a good idea. There's lots we could talk. That's a whole session on that.
Yeah.
But the real problem was like, well, what does he promise these people? Because he's like, you have to do this employee thing. You have to match this. You have to do this. You have to do this. Like, what did you do? What did you promise that you're not repping to? That you're not telling us? What's underneath this? Why would you do that? I don't know anybody that does this.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two employees. I've got one or two, maybe.
Yeah.
But not the entire place. And then you just took them from here to here. Like, you're going to stick me with it?
So what was the reason?
He'll never admit to it, but it was, we call it a seller remorse, where the seller's having seller guilt. So seller guilt is, I'm going to get millions for this, in this case, $5 million for my company. I've got this whole staff. I've got staff that's worked with me 10, 8, 12 years, whatever, 6, 7, 8 years, 12 years. And they don't own a piece of the company, so they're not going to make any money on this. And maybe I have to settle up on their PTO, right? But, they give them a guilt raise. Or they give them guilt bennies. In this case, he did both. He gave him a guilt raise and he gave him guilt bennies. And I'm supposed to, and it doesn't work for my math.
Correct.
Right? So then I've got a problem as a buyer. So I know that before LOI, it's one thing. Finding out after LOI is a different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you can only find out so much, right? So we try really hard to find out what we can find out because we don't like losing deals. We don't like breakage.
Yeah.
We don't make any money on breakage.
Yeah.
But unselfishly, it doesn't get done. It's a lot of waste of everybody's time.
How about culture?
Culture would be right there next. So when you're doing the employee thing, it's all about culture. What do they expect? I've got companies that are high culture, taking on low culture works better than high culture coming into low culture, right? So it's the same thing if you think about big clients and little clients. What fits, right? Um, a guy that has big clients taking on little clients, again, can a guys doing little clients take on big clients? Also hard to say. You want to find a better match there.
Yeah,
Uh,
depends.
but corporate culture is, they all come to the office, all the time. And the office has a break room and not just a break room. They've got like a full bar and a whatever, and they serve meals. And I used to have a business like that years ago. Um, just what's the level of what they expect. I've got a customer of ours in the back east that, man, he takes the employees on trips, twice a year, and they do really fancy, blows money on the employees, like he really does.
Yeah.
So anybody that's going to join that company is like very much a leg up on the corporate culture.
Yeah.
But also, it's not everybody wants to do that either.
Yeah.
There's people that just don't do the rah thing, and
Yeah.
so is that going to fit everybody? So just being really transparent about what they're expecting and trying to understand what the other side's doing, and can that mesh well. And then it comes down to also, and this is really hard to determine, but do these people bitch and moan when it's 5 o'clock and they can't go home?
Mm. Yes. I've
What's
seen
the
it.
work?
Yeah.
What's the work culture, right?
Yes. I don't
Does that make
seen
sense?
seen that. It's funny. It was a manufacturing business, and just like 2 weeks ago, and I went and I visited them, and he told me, oh, it's that employees leave at 4, like the shift ends at 4, and man, like within like maybe like 3:59, gone. And I was like quiet, and then he's like, and I'm like, that's odd because usually you always have people that stay after, people that
Sure.
want to do a little bit more, people that like I remember every company that I ran, people stay. Like,
So that's the hardest part of the corporate culture to figure out
yeah,
before closing.
yeah,
Uh, but everything you can do to get those kind of conversations going to learn about that
yes,
is a real, harbinger of what's going to happen next once you get a deal closed, right?
yeah,
So again, you got everybody runs home at 5 o'clock, like clockwork company
yeah,
that's buying somebody that doesn't do that.
correct,
You're going to retrain those people. So you got to think about that.
yeah,
But it's the opposite. It's the real problem, right? So if you got a
yes,
company that works their ass off and everybody's gung ho, we call our employees Cogenteers, for example,
yeah,
and they all crank it down when it's time to crank it down.
yeah.
I don't hear about, oh, I had to work later. Um, at least not to my face. Anyway.
So,
Um,
so where like a couple things around the deal itself, or like the ideal deal? What does that look like? We talked about the seller, we talked about the buyer, we talked about the
okay.
employees. Is there
Again,
anything around
bit of a
the
trick
deal itself?
question,
Yeah,
and that's a changing thing over time, right? Used to be 10 years ago, we were 15 years old now. So in that first 5 years, we were getting deals done mostly as an asset purchase, um, with somewhere between 25 and 35% cash at closing. The balance of whatever the purchase price was split between a seller note and an earnout. And the way we do earnouts, by the way, we base them on gross revenue, instead of trying to base them on EBITDA or other
yeah,
kind of hooey schmooey accounting.
yeah,
Prevents the buyer from having to worry about how they're doing their books and records. It's you don't have to change anything. The revenue shows up, you write a check. That's how we do them. We don't base it on gross margin and all that stuff. We base the percentage we want to pay on what we've learned, but we don't actually do it that way. Um, so you've got you can go down that path, and then there's a lot of ways to look at it. I mean, that's probably the toughest question to answer. Does that make sense? Is
yeah.
this is
Well, that's why that's why I'm asking it.
Well, go ahead. Is there another way you want to rephrase it? I mean, there's another way to rephrase it.
No, like over time, you've seen so many deals, you've seen so many businesses, and you've seen so many structures, and there's one that stood out at some point.
Okay. All
So how
right.
about
Well,
that?
yeah. So
Find
what's popular nowadays is the stock purchase, actually. And the more cash at closing, the better, because there's so many suitors. Everybody wants to be a buyer. Like literally, I get calls 5 or 6 times a week, emails from all kinds of people. PE companies, operating companies everywhere. Hey, Murphy, we need deal flow. We want deal flow. We want deal flow. And I wish I knew every seller on the planet because I could fill them all up. But then not everybody's ready, right? Not everybody's ready on time. I'm not ready. I haven't grown my business enough yet. There's all kinds of issues why people don't want to play
Yeah.
because they think they can be a buyer or because they know the company's valuable. So if I can take my EBITDA from $1 million to $3 million, then I'm going to get this much more money from my company. And I've got a 5-year plan, and they just go on and on and on and on and on. So stock purchase is more important. Right now, you're going to see more 50 to 60% cash at closing or more is more of the norm than it used to be.
Wow.
I don't get many deals done below 50% cash at closing anymore. Deal structure is an asset purchase versus stock purchase. More stock purchases than not because you have IRS regulations, 330H10, F reorg, and a couple other ways you can do transactions to protect the buyer in a transaction of a stock purchase. But what's interesting with a stock purchase is you are buying the EIN of the business. You're buying the IRS EIN. So when you own that EIN, you are stepping into everything they've done. But the good news is it doesn't breach customer agreements.
Yeah.
It doesn't breach vendor agreements because you're stepping into the agreement. Unless there's a change of control clause in those agreements, then you're stepping into them. So you're not having to rewrite them. In an asset purchase, you're having to assign or assume those agreements. And some are assumable and assignable, which again, small business guys, well, they're not good at financials. They also suck at contract. Keeping contracts handy where they can get to them for anything. It doesn't matter what it's for. Employees or whatever, it doesn't matter. They're just all terrible at it. But at the end of the day, is being able to say, okay, if I do the stock purchase, then I do have to do more diligence, but at the same time, it's not that much more due diligence, and I get the benefit of being able to step into all these agreements without having to change. I'm even stepping into a bank account.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot more of that. More of the buyers are more sophisticated. Part of it was, is the buying universe less sophisticated? They understand how to accomplish the stock purchase properly and what to do on the other side of a closing in a stock purchase. So as the buying community is becoming more seasoned and having done it more and so forth, that's being a little easier to do. But that's kind of the new norm.
What do you do on the other side that's unique? I'm assuming you do less things on the other side of a deal.
Or is this less to do, right? I mean,
yes.
So in an asset purchase, every employee is technically fired.
Correct.
Until you reemploy them. So you've got to literally day one sit down and give everybody an offer letter and then sign a new non-compete and everything else you got to do. And then you're going to be walking through and looking at assumability and assignability of every customer agreement and also every vendor agreement. A lot of the vendor agreements are like online agreements, and oh my God, I got to go walk with. So there's quite a bit of work to do in an asset purchase, and it opens up, the can of worms of what if they don't. Now, it's the same thing is kind of true in a stock purchase. What if they don't? But as long as they don't have any egregious change of control clauses, typically you're just walking into every existing relationship as the new owner. You don't even have to worry about changing the brand if you don't want to because you own the brand. Yeah. So you see people like Evergreen where they just keep all the brands nowadays. They used to change the brands a long time ago, but now they just keep all the brands and operate the brands, and they slowly sister company them. They slowly sibling them into sort of a what do they call it with the Borg assimilation?
Yes.
They get
assimilated. Well, I think there were a lot of acquisitions. There were a lot of large exits, roll-ups of companies that stayed individual. I remember one in the roofing, one of the largest roofing companies. It was, I think it was like a $6 billion exit, but it was like, 100 smaller companies that stayed in their own brand, their own culture, their own owners, and they all exited together. So the market has not penalized those roll-ups and rewarded them.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yes.
And it never goes at a different speed. So there are companies out there that don't believe in integration at all. They believe everybody has their own brand. They run it. There's a couple of them I won't comment on that I wonder about their motivation some days, but I'll shut up. And there's other companies that believe in full integration. Yeah. I think Mariplex is a really good sounding board for that. I mean, if you listen to Neil, and I know David as well, who've done some deals with them over the years. They are full integration or nothing. If you don't want to fully integrate, they won't talk to you. If you can't be fully integrated and don't want to be fully integrated, they just don't want to do business with you because they want to be fully integrated.
Yeah.
And there's other businesses like that. And that's just the way they think. So when you look at a candidate company, that candidate company has to be think that's a good idea, or they're not going to want to play.
Yeah.
Right. And there's other companies that are exactly the opposite. And then there's some people that are sort of in the middle. Evergreen's a good example of that. They do some integration, but they do also some brand retainment. They do a little bit of both. They've got a sort of unique way they function. They've done a lot of transactions. We've helped them with quite a few. Actually, I have a couple in front of them now.
Nice.
And but what's interesting, they've got a unique way they do it. They're it's almost like Baskin 31 flavors, or Haagen-Dazs. Like if you like the dulce de leche, you might not like the chocolate too much. So they all got the flavors that they do really well, and their favorite flavors. And so I tend to be more of an integrator guy. I tend to be I like Evergreen's approach as well. It's like partial integration. The fully unintegrated, I don't see synergies there. And is somebody going to come along and give them what I call a liquidity moment instead of an exit? While it might be an exit for some people, a liquidity moment is where I'm going to take Ameriplex buys me. I'm going to take some rollover of Ameriplex stock. That's also a very popular thing nowadays, is rollover equity in a purchase deal, whether it's an operating company or whether it's a PE-based company. And you take equity in the mothership when you sell your company. And then that equity can be extremely valuable on the other side of a transaction. And it's also a stay bonus, if you will. It's a golden handcuff. So I want you to stay with the company, please, and keep doing what you're doing. We'll make it worth your while. Take some of our equity too, and then you're going to see another payday, maybe another payday after that, and it keeps everybody motivated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
That kind of structure is really popular now.
That is super popular. One last question: What is the perfect what is the perfect integration? You bought the company. Now what? What do you recommend your sellers to do?
That's a hour-long conversation for sure. Again, so couple golden rules. First, Hippocratic Oath with a twist. Hippocratic Oath is first do no harm. So that's my best recommendation. However, we've learned over the years that it's first do no harm unless something's bleeding, and put a tourniquet on the bleeding, right? Because actually, somebody said, I did what you said, Murphy. We didn't do any harm. I said, but yeah, the leg was falling off and the arm was bleeding. And man, you got to get the, bandage up the arm and fix the leg. And then you're good, Yeah. You're not doing harm. You're triaging, Yeah. So first do no harm, but triage what needs to be triaged. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you walk in the door, the very first meeting you're going to have is a meeting with the employees. Get the employees onboarded, make them sign the secret sauce, make them part of the secret sauce, make them part of the family immediately, like day 1, day 2, day 3. You're going to fly in with your management team. You're going to meet everybody in that company. They're all going to meet you and a bunch of people on your team. You're going to have a party that evening or the next evening, and you're going to do that meeting on a Monday or Tuesday, so you have access to them all week long. They're not going to go home over the weekend and pondering their existence. Okay? So get the employees done, number one. Now that you got the employees done, they're also going to be sworn to secrecy. Do not talk to the freaking clients unless we're talking about what client we're talking about here. You don't tell the story to the client unless you're telling the story I want you to tell. And since you're just now a new employee with me, you don't know how to tell that story yet. Bob and George and Fred and Sally and Fran are going to tell that story until we get that story told, and we've onboarded the top 80% of the top clients that make up 80% of the revenue of the company. You want to get at least the 50%. So the very first tack is to go after the clients that make up the top 50% of revenue of the company. Work your way down to top 80% after that. The last 20% are usually the smaller clients that get, they get emails. They're not going to be that problematic anyway. Yeah. But you're prioritizing what we call the ABC list, which is coterminous with making the employees happy, making sure they don't say anything stupid. Really important. One of the main reasons you get them happy is they don't do anything stupid or just do anything because they don't know better. Might be a better way to put that. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to tell Bob he got sold the company, but I think Bob's going to be so pissed I didn't tell him personally, right?
Yeah.
So you go the ABC list. A list are the people that needs the most attention. The B list need less attention. It's not necessarily about money. It's more about attention.
Yeah.
The A list needs dinner and whining and dining and hugs and kisses and whatever, right? The B list might need some of that, but not quite as needy as the A list. Mm-hmm. And then the C list are the people that get a letter and maybe a nice phone call. Um, and then so you do that, and you do it without changing the branding. I don't care if you are going to change the branding and do a full integration later or not.
Yeah.
You don't change the branding for at least the first 3 to 6 months.
Yep.
There's no need to do that.
Yep.
It creates undue pressure on everybody. You're not putting out press releases too quickly before all this is done. So you don't do any press release on this until after you've done the customers and the employees.
Yeah.
And then you're going to plan. So while you're doing all that, the other thing you're doing is you're doing pre-integration planning, measure twice, measure 3 times, measure 5 times, measure 20 times, then cut once. So you do pre-integration planning, pre-close, but you continue doing the planning post-close, executing on the things you were going to do in that first 30 days, really taking the time. Now you get to work with everybody. Now you get to talk to everybody. Now Rick can come and bitch and moan about things they were going to bitch and moan about. They can come and compliment the things they're going to compliment. Hey, I love the way you do this, or we love to do it this way. And you're going to, whatever those battles are or those fun things are, they're both usually. At the end of the day, here's how we're going to roll forward. And now that we know this, now we can do this, this, and this in order.
Yeah.
So here's how we're going to do this messaging. Here's what we're going to do to the website. Here's what we're going to do to this. Here's how we're going to deal with accounting. When do the bills start going out with the new company's name on them or with the new brand on it? With ABC company, a company of you,
Powered of
company.
Yeah. Powered by.
So right, powered by Bobcom.
Yeah.
Sam, let me just get rid of something. Somebody's trying to call me on Teams real fast. There we go. So that awareness is important, right? Because now that you got control of the employees, you got control of the customers to the degree you can, and that's sort of an ongoing process over that first 6 months for sure. After 6 months, 9 months, they're your customers, pretty much.
Yeah.
Certainly by a year, they're your customers.
Yeah.
And after the first 2 or 3 months, they're your employees, right?
Yes.
So it's getting a hold of the employees first because they're the ones that have the customer relationships and working through them to get them all to work together as a team so they can meet and greet your customers and get their customers and get the customers tight.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Those are the two most important things.
Absolutely. Love it. And I mean, dude, we could probably talk for hours, and I mean, and I enjoy talking to you. So, and I enjoy talking deals. So, how do people engage and work with you? How do they connect with you?
Rick at cogentmergers.com.
Okay.
Cogentmergers.com, our website. You can actually get me just through the website. There's a lot of good stuff up on the website if you want to read about it. Happy to have a meeting about any subject. Don't matter. We know how to keep secrets because somebody's talking with us doesn't mean I'm going to be bragging on it. I don't use people's names. You can see even today, use examples maybe, but
yeah,
I'm not going to out anybody, whether you want to be a buyer or seller. But we're always looking for good new clients. We're always looking for companies that are M&A-curious that might want to play with one of our clientele.
Awesome. Well, we'll probably have to have you come back again and talk even more. Probably we'll focus on one section at a time.
I was going to say, if you want to pick a section down and gritty, happy to do that. Whatever section you want to get into, we can get down and dirty with that. Makes sense?
I appreciate it. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Have a good
one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.